My name is Philip.
And I am Kevin.
I'm Terry.
And I am Bernice. This morning we will present various major influences of Kafka's life. Our presentation is based on a concept known as Draw My Life that originated on YouTube. In order for viewers to know YouTube stars better, the stars often created videos about themselves, where they would both narrate and illustrate a video of their life story. This presentation is not too much about Kafka's life because another group will present that, and we don't really want to steal their thunder. So we will focus on more of the events aspect. We hope you enjoy this presentation.
Franz Kafka has written many notable works, such as The Metamorphosis, which we will be discussing later, and other titles such as The Trial and The Contemplation. Unfortunately, Kafka's literature did not contain the most happiest subjects, as he was not a happy man himself.
Franz Kafka was born to Hermann and Julie Kafka in 1883 in Prague, which was the largest and the capital city of Czech Republic. Hermann was both a businessman and a ritual slaughterer, a profession that included the killing of cattle and poultry to follow Jewish laws. Julie was a well-educated woman who helped manage her family's business.
Hermann Kafka was always angry. To channel his anger, he often abused Franz, not only physically but mentally as well, discouraging Franz's great passion of literature and always saying that his writing pieces were of low quality. Hermann wanted Franz to follow in his own footsteps and become a businessman. To appease his father, Kafka studied law, only later to drop out of law and to write literature.
Despite following his own dreams and becoming a writer, Kafka often felt as if he was a disappointment to his family, and specifically his father, for not becoming a lawyer, a profession he knew could have gained more money than being a writer. This resulted in feelings of guilt that would remain with Kafka for the rest of his life, as displayed in the famous letter to his father. Kafka very clearly states and indicts his father for the emotional abuse that Kafka experienced. Furthermore, Kafka was not particularly successful as a writer, for he was not popular and many of his writings remained as manuscripts unpublished. His feelings are projected in The Metamorphosis, when Gregor feels extreme guilt for turning into a vermin and realizes his incapability of providing for his family as a bug.
This abusive experience of Kafka is also reflected in his own work, The Metamorphosis, as Gregor Samsa, who is the main character and who becomes a vermin, also experienced both physical and mental abuse from his own father, Eris Samsa.
Great War, also known as World War I, broke out in 1914 with the assassination of the Archduke of the Austro-Hungarian Empire, Archduke Franz Ferdinand. The assassination was conducted by a terrorist group known as the Black Hand and took place on June 28, 1914, when the Archduke and his wife Sophie were touring Sarajevo.
This attack on the Austro-Hungarian Empire caused them to threaten Serbia, as the Black Hand was a Serbian terrorist organization. Intimidated, Russia mobilized its army to defend Serbia. Germany, then allied with the Austro-Hungarian Empire, declared war against Russia.
Within Prague, there were two main languages spoken, German and Czech. Kafka's family spoke German and was therefore distrusted by the Czech-speaking people of Prague. Though many Jewish people lived in Prague at that time, as a result of the two Jewish golden ages in the 14th and 16th century, the Jews were not appreciated by non-Jews due to historical conflicts. Consequently, not only did Kafka's family face isolation from others due to their speaking of German, but as Jewish people, they experienced anti-Semitism, which is the discrimination against Jewish people due to their heritage.
Franz Kafka also felt alienated from his own family because his parents were very, very busy, working day in and day out to support the Kafka family. In addition, Franz was the oldest child and therefore a large burden was placed on him to care for his siblings when his parents were not home. As a result, Franz Kafka was distant with his parents and often felt neglected. The sense of neglect and alienation is reflected in Kafka's literature, as shown in The Metamorphosis, when Gregor is isolated from his family by working all the time, and ultimately when he becomes a vermin and is cooped up inside his room. His family chose to lock him and keep him in there to be unseen from the world. Gregor's family could not bring themselves to get rid of Gregor.
During and after World War I, people were fearful and concerned of many different things, mainly safety and security. With the constant raids, invasions, and bombings, people were troubled over their well-being. Plus, the new inventions of weaponry such as poisonous gases, tanks, and submarines increased people's ever-growing fear. Kafka also received a draft notice to serve in the war. However, at this time, he was working at an insurance office, and his employers applied for deferments because Kafka was considered to be providing civil service to the government through his work. Thus, Kafka was never directly involved in the Great War.
Coming out of World War I, people were relieved, for the warfare would finally cease, and in addition, many people's family members would be able to return home. However, after this initial relief, people began to question the purpose of their existence. As a result, the birth of existentialism occurred, a philosophy developed by Sartre, Kierkegaard, Dostoevsky, and Nietzsche. Existentialism is illustrated in many works of Kafka. For example, Gregor contemplates the purpose of his existence as he becomes a vermin. When he was a human, his main focus was to provide for his family through his work, which he did very, very well. As a vermin, however, Gregor is unable to work and thus loses and seeks to find the purpose to his life. Kafka died of tuberculosis, and despite wanting Max Brod, his good friend, to destroy all manuscripts, his wishes were ignored because Brod saw potential in Kafka's works. Thus, Kafka's works were published, and as a result, we now have the opportunity to study his literature.